to communicate, but today is. So I'm very excited to share. Okay, so first things first. The whole excitement that I got for getting on here was the fact that I took my son yesterday to get his eyes checked. I actually hadn't noticed it. It had come through my parents and my husband first, where they're like, he's squinting a lot. And then I asked him about it when I saw him squinting at the TV, and he said, I had to move up in my classes, Mom. I couldn't see. Okay, so let's go get your eyes checked. So I got him into an appointment pretty quickly, got his eyes checked, and I was kind of surprised at the outcome, but I was also kind of excited at the outcome. You see, 18 months ago when I got his eyes checked, he had nearsightedness in one eye and farsightedness in the other, which was kind of interesting. He actually gets that from a family member. And then when I had him checked again yesterday, he was nearsighted in both eyes. Now, here's the interesting part. I asked the doctor about it, and the doctor goes, that happens all the time. Eyes change and kids are growing up. And I was like, this is good. This is really good. That means there is hope. Here's the hope for my son. Are you ready for this? I'm going to start with myself. Well, actually, I'll start with my son since we're talking about him. So I love using books like this, Feelings Buried Alive Never Die, and Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life. So out of Louise Hay's book, I actually only have it on my Kindle, so I don't have a physical copy. So I wrote down all of Louise's insights on eyesight. And eyesight is the capacity to see clearly in your past, present, and future. So if you have an affirmation for your eyesight, the affirmation is, I see clearly with love and joy. So now here's what was happening. Farsightedness has an emotional root to it. You might think this is totally crazy, and if this is not your jam, you can totally stop listening. I am not offended. But if it is your jam or you're intrigued, stay with me. Farsightedness is fear of the present. And an affirmation for that is, I am safe in the here and now. I see clearly. So what was going on in my life 18 months ago? I was pregnant. We had just moved into a new house. Things were still in limbo a little bit. And my husband was really working on getting a business up and running. So my son had a fear of our current situation at that time. There was just so much in limbo for him. And so I was fascinated that now, 18 months later, we're very settled and things are so much better that he no longer has the farsightedness. Cool, right? Okay, so nearsightedness. Nearsightedness is fear of the future. So an affirmation is, I accept divine guidance and I am always safe. Because do any of us really know what's happening in the future? No. I remember when I was 17 and I was getting ready to graduate from high school, and I couldn't see the pattern of my future. I didn't know what was going to happen. And honestly, and I've shared this in an emotional weight loss group that Steve is running, that my fear of all that transition actually causes me to put on weight. And so 18 months ago, I had put on weight, and I even did all the way through last year. And now I'm in a place where I really feel safe and safe to let it go. So interesting, fear of the future. So my son is now fearing the future, which, okay, that's great. So what am I going to do about it? Well, I love the tapping solution. I really love Nick Ortner and his sister Jessica, and they're doing a free summit right now. Where they do like 3 classes, each an hour long, every day online. And so what I have learned from Nick is that I can tap through the limiting beliefs, such as fear of the future, on all the tapping points of the body, and then tap in the positive affirmation. And I'm like, this will be great. Now here's the kicker. Are you ready for this? I healed the astigmatism in my eyes that had been there for decades. I did. And this is what it is. So astigmatism, the emotional root for astigmatism is eye trouble. fear of seeing the self. And then the affirmation is, I am willing to see my own beauty and magnificence. And that journey started several years ago, as I finally had the courage to do the Dressing Your Truth course online, which is also free, and discover my true energy type. And I loved it. And then as I started to heal, when you discover and you're really honest with yourself and who you truly are, because sometimes we all want to be somebody else because that's where we've lived safely, but safe and thrive are two different things. And to thrive is where the release comes and where all that healing comes. So I decided I had the courage to do it, and then I had the courage to not only feel it, but dress it and express it. And so that's where I've actually really loved a lot of my current business right now, is helping people just thrive and express, whether that's, and usually that's with the assistance of essential oils and then assistance of a little coaching. And it's so cool. It's so cool. So anyway, back to me, because it was the eye trouble. The fear of seeing myself. So I released and I opened up, and I had a willingness to see my beauty and my magnificence. And that is a process. It is not something that's one and done. It's a journey. But where I've come on the journey, it healed the astigmatism in my eye. Now, if you talk to a doctor about astigmatism, they're like, well, the eye has kind of changed in shape, right? But I was so excited when I did my last eye appointment. Oh my gosh, it was almost 2 years ago, where the doctor was like, you don't need toric lenses for your contacts anymore. You don't have astigmatism. And I was like, yes, it's gone. So belief in myself literally changed the shape of my eye. Okay, so now this is where I want to go to. I am using a manual to guide me through the New Testament. And right now I'm only in the Gospels. But this manual I'm looking through had some insight about Matthew 6 and 7, and then I'll talk about Matthew 8 and 9 in a sec. But in Matthew 6 and 7, the manual used the word should. And if you know me, and I asked my kids, what does mommy think of the word should? And they're like, it doesn't exist. I'm like, exactly, it doesn't exist, because shoulding is never the way you should live your life, right? Never should yourself. So it had that word all over in here. And so I erased the word, I crossed it out, and I wrote in a new word. So for I desire to set my heart upon heavenly things. And I took out the word should and I put in the word desire instead. I took out the word should after I, and I said, instead of I should, I said, I have the option to care more about what God thinks of me than what others think. And then I wrote my own insight to that, which is, and I accept my happiness and human experience that is linked to how I become and grow with God as my guide. Because it's not like God's molding me. He already knows what I can become. The question is, do I, and can I become that? I don't need to be an exact copy. It's not like he's trying to make exact copies of all of us doing the exact same thing in a mold. In fact, I firmly reject that as parents we are molding our kids. Like, we are guiding our kids to be their best selves. And lately I've been joking with people, but it's in all seriousness. I grew the bodies of my babies and my children. I grew their bodies. I had nothing to do with their personality. That came straight from heaven. I just created a body for them, right? You cannot own their personalities. They own their own selves. So then I want to switch over to what I learned in Matthew 8 and 9, and then this comes full circle to what I originally talked about. Matthew 8 and 9 is a lot about Christ healing a leper, healing a centurion servant, healing Peter's mother-in-law, 2 blind men, a man that was paralyzed, a man possessed by evil spirits, Jairus' daughter, a woman with an issue of blood. He healed. he healed. And then one of the prevailing things is him saying, thy faith hath made thee whole. Now, I read enough scripture that I love it when Christ says, but the best part is when the people who don't have me physically there are also able to tap into me and my healing power. Okay? So, I think it says this in the scriptures, but at the moment I'm a little foggy on the details, that physician, heal thyself. Have you ever heard that? Or winked. And that's what I love about Louise Hay and Carol Truman in their healing books is, can you heal yourself? Carol Tuttle goes into it kind of deeply in Remembering Wholeness in her book. Can you heal yourself with Christ as your literal guide and partner? And so that's where all these things come into play, because I'm like, yes, I can. I have faith in divine guidance to be in control, or not to be in control. I don't like that either. It's like control is kind of not great, and I'll talk about that later, but to just be in partnership with the healing process and the releasing process, releasing emotions that are holding you captive, whether that's a physical manifestation in holding on to fat or dis-ease, whatever it looks like, it can hold you captive. And to release that and to have awareness to release it and to open your mind that there is so much going on and playing out in the entire universe. It's not just your own experience in your own body and this in your own immediate instance. It's everywhere. It's like so much is playing for you. And I feel like I'm coaching myself right now. And then I want to point out one more little tidbit of information. And it's in Matthew 8, 5 through 13. And the overarching theme of that is actually, I can seek God's help even if I feel undeserving. Where does that feeling of undeserving come from? So this is insight that I've shared, that my friends have shared with me, and I thought it was really cool. And so I'm adding upon that insight and making it one big grouping. And this is according to how I view my lens of everything. So you might see it differently, and that's great. I'd love to hear that. That feeling undeserving is a shaming feeling. And if you go back to the beginning of time, there is one person that created that shaming feeling. And it was the adversary. In the temptation of the fruit, the adversary created the shame when he said, uh-oh, now you're naked. Got to cover it up. Right? He created that shaming and that awareness of shame. And cover up your naked, cover up and hide. And then even today, how many of us still cover up and hide what we feel it wouldn't be accepted by others? Like cover up and hide it. And then when you do that, you feel undeserving. So the human experience is kind of part of working through that shaming and that undeserving. Like, no, honey, you're worthy. And if you go to, I think Marianne Williamson said this, but it's when you think, who am I to rise to the greatness of this? And she's like, oh, honey, who are you not to be? Aren't we all glorifying our very existence by rising to the best of who we are? And healing. And so I can say, in all honesty, I still have contacts and I still am diagnosed with nearsightedness. And is it an I am statement? It's not an I am statement. It's simply something that is existing in my human experience that I get to heal. And I'm talking across the board. Now, it might be harder for some people to say, well, the glaucoma, blah, blah, blah. Nope, there's an emotional root to glaucoma. There's an emotional root to dry eyes. There's an emotional root to itchy eyes. Like, it's all there, and it's all just feelings that can just get compacted, and they never resolve. They can literally, you just try to bury them alive and they're just still there. So I think it's really cool. That's something that really got me jazzed today, that I really was excited to share with you, my friends. I can't really say I actually even share this at church. It's just between me and you. So enjoy, think about it. And if you have thoughts to share back, I am really interested in the conversation about that. So have a great day.